Brachos Daf Lamed Hey begins the famous Perek Ketzad Mevarchim, which gives us all the halachas of the correct bracha to say on various foods. We will start with a Mishnah. The Mishnah will give us the basics of the brachas on things that grow. Then the Gemara will explain to us the source for these halachos, where these brachas come from. The Gemara will then move on to some words about the importance of saying a bracha and what one is considered if he does not say a bracha. The Gemara will branch off from there into discussing the basic obligation to work versus the obligation to learn, and which is more important. From there, the Gemara will go into a comparison of early generations to current generations. Then the Gemara will get back to Hilchos Brachos, and the Gemara will discuss how come wine gets a special bracha, but olive oil does not, and that will finish off the daf. So let us start the Mishnah, beginning of the Perek. The Gemara says as follows. The Mishnah says as follows. We have a basic machokes. What is the structure of the individual brachos that we say? According to the Tanakama, the more important a certain food is, the more it gets an exclusive bracha, a bracha only for this fruit or for this type of food. If it's less important, it's included in a more general bracha. Therefore, he says, fruit of the tree is moderately important. It gets a special bracha, bar priya eitz. Fruit of the ground, which also technically includes trees, gets a more general bracha, bar priya adama. Fruit of a particular tree, like a grapevine, that gets a very unique bracha because the wine is very important. It gets a special bracha of Bayrei Pri Hagafen. And then fruit of the ground, which is made into bread or some other type of cake, gets a unique bracha also. That's also important. It gets the bracha of Amitzi Lechem Min Haaretz. Now, Rabbi Yehuda holds slightly differently. Rabbi Yehuda holds every type of species gets its own unique bracha. It's not defined by how important it is or how exclusive it is, and therefore he argues here on one specific thing. He says that grassy vegetables get a special bracha, barimine dishoim. Different types of species get different brachas according to Rabbi Yehuda. Now we start the Gemara. The Gemara would like to know what is the source of the concept of saying a bracha. We say on food, we say a bracha before and a bracha after. Where do you get this halacha of two brachas from? So the Gemara quotes a pasuk which is talking about the halacha of neta revoi or kerem revoi, which is the fourth year that something has grown. And the pasuk says as follows: B'shana harvius, in the fourth year, kol pirya kodesh hilulim laHashem. All fruits should be holy. Hilulim laHashem. Hilulim, the Gemara understands as being two hallels, two praises. So these fruits should have a bracha before and a bracha after. That's the two praises. Now the Gemara is going to challenge this by saying two types of challenges. The first sugya will be that you cannot use these two hilulims to tell you have to say a bracha, because both of them are needed for other halachos of revoi, the fourth year. Then the Gemara will move on at the end to a different challenge, which is that even if I grant you that this is a good source, but it doesn't teach you all the fruits, it only teaches you about certain types of fruits and not others. So let's discuss the first challenge. The Gemara says as follows. Revoi is the halacha that the fourth year that a tree is planted, the fruits that grow in the fourth, you have a special kiddush. You have to take them to Yerushalayim and eat them there. They have a special holiness. The Gemara says this hilulim, the two hallels, you can't use that for the two brachos because it's used for two other halachos. The two halachos are as follows. Halacha number one is that we say we have a drush. Hilulim we read as chilulim. You have to be mechalel this revoi, these fourth year fruits, if you want to eat them outside Yerushalayim. Meaning you have to transfer the kedusha, the holiness, off the fruits onto something else which you will take to Yerushalayim. That's halacha number one from the word hilulim. The second is that the whole halacha of revoi only applies to kerem. It only applies to vineyards, which usually means wine. What's the source for that? Because wine is the only thing that we say shira, that we sing songs over. And therefore the word hilulim, which means singing of songs, shows you that the whole concept that it's in the middle of discussing, which is revoi, only applies to wine. It says kodesh hilulim. This revoi is about something where you sing songs over, and that's wine. How do you know they sing songs over wine? So the Gemara quotes Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar of Yonasan, who says, "V'taymer lehem hagefen hechad." The grapevine brings joy to people and gods. It says people, I understand. You drink wine, you get happy. Gods, how does it bring them joy? Kaviyachal. It means that you say shira of it over it, and therefore it brings joy kaviyachal to God, not gods. Okay. So this means the two pesukim of hilulim, the two hilulums, are used up for other halachas. You can't use them for the concept of saying a bracha. So the Gemara says, listen, if you want to tell me that you don't hold of the second halacha, there's a machlokes about it. Is it true that Revaya only applies to grapes? So if you hold that, no, Revaya applies to everything, so you don't have the whole second halacha. Okay, so then you have one of the hilulims, and the Gemara says, so that'll tell me the bracha you say after eating, which we know is more important. It says after you've eaten, you say a bracha. And then the Gemara says, well, kal v'chomer, if you say a bracha after you've eaten, you should say a bracha before you've eaten, because when you're full, you thank Hashem for the food. When you're hungry and you feel the pain of having not eaten, you should certainly thank Hashem for the food. Okay, so if you want to hold like that approach, that the halacha of revoy is neta revoy, it applies to all fourth year fruits, not just grapes, so then you have a good source. However, if you hold like the other shita, and it's a machlokes between Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Shimon, but Rabbi. So if you hold like the other shita, we're not sure which one is which. If you hold that the halacha of Revai applies only to grapes, and you need the pasuk of Hilulim to tell you that, so then you do not have a source for the concept of saying a bracha. So Gemara says no. There is a different source for this shita that you need to have. That for this shita that the concept of Revai only applies to grapes, that is really derived from a different place, and the word Hilulim is left open to say brachos, and you could use the same kal v'chomer to say bracha afterwards, and therefore bracha before. So what's the other source for this concept that the mitzvah of Revai only applies to grapes? It's from a Gzeira Shava. The word tevua appears in the psukim describing Revai, the fourth year, and the word tevua is used to describe grapes. It says asher tizra tevuas hakerem. So you see, tevua is a way of describing a grapevine. So therefore, that's the source for the halacha that Revai only applies to grapes. It's a link with the Gzeira Shava, tevua, and our word hilulim is left free again, and that can be said teach us bracha chayna and kal v'chomer bracha rishayna. The Gemara now moves on to its second challenge. It says, okay, I'll grant you that you've given me a good source for a bracha, rishayna, and achrayna. But, according to the opinion that this entire source is written by Revai, and Revai only applies to kerem, only applies to vineyards, so how do you know that it applies to all kinds of other fruits? So, the Gemara has other sources for two other types of fruits. For grains, for breads, the Gemara has a source, because it says, by bread, it says, Toichal balechem, and right afterwards it says v'chaltev zivatu ve'rachta. So that's a source that there's a bracha, at least a bracha achrona, on grain foods. And on the other shivas haminim, the 7 special fruits that Eretz Yisrael is blessed with, it also says v'chaltev zivatu ve'rachta linked to them. So we have a source. According to this, we have a source for grapes, we have a source for grains, and we have a source for the other 7 minim. And the Gemara says, now how do you know all the other foods out there? So the Gemara says, well, the Gemara will attempt to learn from each of these 3 sources which we know to the other foods, and for each one the Gemara is going to try to find a pircha. A pircha is if you say that you cannot learn from one place to another because the factor about the one place that triggers the halacha you're trying to learn does not apply somewhere else. It's called a pircha. The Gemara will try to get rid of the pircha, and the Gemara will end up with a final conclusion. So let's see what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, first of all, let's try to learn from grapes to other foods. The Gemara says you can't, because grapes have a special halacha of oilulus. Oilulus is if you find grapes on your vine which didn't grow in a cluster, they just grew with grapes on the end of a twig, there's a special halacha, you leave that for the poor, because it has a special mitzvah, so maybe that's why it needs a bracha. That's the factor that triggers the bracha, but you cannot learn it to other foods which do not have the special mitzvah. So the Gemara says, okay, what about bread? No, bread also has a special mitzvah, it's mitzvah challah. Later, the Gemara will say Shivas Haminim, the 7 special fruits, also have a special mitzvah, the mitzvah of Bikurim. So you can't learn from any of these. So the Gemara tries to show that each special mitzvah can't be the factor that triggers the need for a bracha, because each other one doesn't have that special mitzvah. So the Gemara accepts that for Shivas Haminim. The Gemara does not accept that for learning out of grapes and out of bread. The Gemara there wants to say the factor that triggers it, maybe, is the fact that both those things, bread and wine, go on the mizbeach, right? The flour goes as a korban mincha, and wine goes as nesachim. So the Gemara says, so from those two I could learn to olives. Olives also go on the mizbeach, oil is poured on the mizbeach, but I can't learn to other fruits. So the Gemara wants to say, okay, maybe you could learn from the 7 fruits. The Gemara says the 7 fruits has its own mitzvah, like we said. The Gemara is not clear why we can't use all 3 together. The Gemara doesn't address that. The Gemara then goes on and says, listen, anyway you have a problem because according to the Mandi Omar, which we brought way earlier, that the mitzvah of Revoi is referring to all things that grow, so then you have a source for all things that grow. You're not going to have any source for things that don't grow. What about eggs? Right? What about meat? What about fish? What are you going to do with that? So the Gemara ends up saying, you're right, we do not have a source that applies to all these foods, but it's logical. How could you eat from Hashem's food without thanking Him for it, without expressing praise for it? And that is the Gemara's final conclusion. The Gemara now says a few words about somebody who eats from the world without saying a bracha. The Gemara quotes a brayso that says somebody who does that, he's over me'ila. It's as if he has used hekdesh, the consecrated materials, without permission. The Gemara says, what should he do? He should go to a chacham. The Gemara says, chacham, what's a chacham going to help him? He says, no. You should go to chacham beforehand so that he doesn't make a mistake. You should know halachas brachos. You shouldn't come to be over this avera. Rav Yehuda Mishmuel gives a slightly different version. Somebody who uses something from this world without saying a bracha, as if he's using kodshei shomayim, consecrated things of shomayim, like it says, Hashem haaretzum loya. Everything belongs to Hashem. The Gemara says we have a contradiction. Rav Levi said, it says Lashem haaretzum loya. Hashem owns the earth, and then it says Hashemayim shemayim Lashem haaretz asan levnei adam, that people own the earth and Hashem owns shomayim. Where it says it's not a contradiction. What is before you say a bracha, then it belongs to Hashem. After you say a bracha, then it's given to you. Where it says Rav Chanina Bar Papa says somebody who uses things from this world without a bracha, it's like he steals from a Kadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. What's the pasuk in Mishlei? Goizel Avivi. You may somebody who steals from his father and his mother. Gemara says father is Hashem, like it says Kihu Avicha Konecha. His mother is Knesset Yisrael, like it says Shema B'ni Musar Avicha V'al Titosh Terasi Mechel, the Torah of your mother, meaning Klal Yisrael. The pasuk continues and it says Ein Pasha. Now it's not an Aveira anymore. Everybody thinks that you're allowed to do it. Chavru lesh mashchas, you become a friend to the destroyer. Who's the destroyer? The Gemara says that's Yeravam ben Nevat, who broke off Malchus Yisrael, the kingdom of Israel, from the kingdom of Yehuda. And he made a tremendous destruction to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Gemara now discusses whether or not you need to work for your livelihood, or you could just closet yourself and learn, and it will come to you for free. So the Gemara has 3 levels of work you might have to do. One is that you may have to work, and you might not get anything for it. Like the pasuk says, "Well, kachti degani b'itay," I'll keep the grain for myself. Hashem says. The second is you'll have to work, but at least you'll get. It says, "V'yasafta deganachal," you'll be able to gather your grain. The third level is where you won't have to work; it'll all be done for you, or the rest of the nations of the world will do your work for you. So the Gemara starts off at B'chnina Bar Puppy says, how do you understand? In one place it says Lakachti Digani, and the other place it says V'asafta Digani. The grain is yours or mine. So he says one is talking about where you're doing mitzvahs, one is talking about you're doing averis. If you're doing mitzvahs, you'll get grain and you'll work for it. If you're doing averis, you won't. Then the Gemara says Rav Shimon Bar Yochai says differently. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai says, what does this mean? A person is supposed to work for his food, and how are you going to have a chance to learn? In the time of plowing, he has to plow. The time of planting, he has to plant. The time of harvesting, he has to harvest. Threshing, he has to thresh. Winnowing, he has to winnow. He's not going to have a chance to learn. So it works like this. If you're doing mitzvahs, you're doing everything correctly, you won't have to work at all. You'll get everything for free. The rest of the nations of the world will help you. And that's what it means. Lakachti digani. You won't have to be v'yasafta diganecha. It'll come to you for free. However, if you're not doing the right thing, then you'll have to work. And not only will you have to work, you'll have to work for yourself. You even have to work for the goyim, like it says, you'll have to serve your enemies. Now the Gemara says you have a basic machlekes here. Do you have to work for your food, or could you just closet yourself and learn? Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says if you just learn and you do everything correctly, you'll get everything. And Rabbi Shmuel says no, you have to be normal. You have to work for your food like everybody else. And Gemara says many people did like Rabbi Shimon, many people did like Rabbi Shmuel, and it worked out. It worked part of the day. They learned, and they were able to survive. Many people tried to do like Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. The Gemara says, Abai says it did not work out for them. The Gemara supports this. The Rav used to tell his Talmidim, do me a favor, in the months of Nisan, when it's time for planting, and in the months of Tishrei, when it's time for pressing the grapes and other fruits, do not come to yeshiva. Take care of your parnasa then. That way the rest of the year you'll be free. Otherwise you'll be busy chasing a few dollars all year. The Gemara quotes 2 statements of Rabbi Bar Chana Rav Yechon and the name of Yehuda Bar Eloi, which compare our generations to the previous generations. First of all, he said, our generations is not like the previous Dairis. The early ones, they focused their day around learning, and they scheduled whatever work they had to do around it. And then they were able to work successfully, and they were able to learn successfully. In our generation, he says, this is in his dar, we do the opposite. We focus our day around work, and we try to schedule in some learning around it. And he says that neither of them work out for us. Our work doesn't work out, we don't have parnasa, and our learning doesn't stick with us. Second statement, in the old days, they used to try to be mechayev themselves in meiser as much as they could. They brought it in through the front door, which means that you're chayev meiser. In our days, we try to avoid it. We try to bring it in from the roof, from the window, from the porch, from the backyard, from the garage, whatever it is. We try to get out of it. Like the halach is, Rabbi Yanai says that it doesn't become, your fruits don't become chayev meiser until you bring it into the front door. Like it says, Bi'arti kodesh min habayis, it has to be from the house. Rabbi Yochanan says, even if you just bring it to the front yard, it's already chayev in meiser. The Gemara now wants to know, returning to Hilchos Brachos, why is it that wine is so chashiv that it gets a special bracha, but olive oil is not chashiv? If the reason for the special bracha is the extra chashivas, oil is a very chashiv thing. It's made from squeezed olives. It's increased chashivas by processing, just like wine. So the Gemara will have two attempts to answer the question. The Gemara will reject the first one. The first one is that wine, that really, you're right, you should have been able to say a special bracha on olive oil. The thing is, what bracha would you say? On wine, we say bar pri hagefen, the fruit of the vine. Grapevine is called a gefen, but wine, the olive tree is called a zayis, and the olive fruit is called a zayis. If you say bar pri zayis, it would be confusing. It wouldn't sound correct. It would sound like the fruit of itself. It's got to be the fruit of the tree, and the tree is the same name as the fruit. So the Gemara says this is not a good reason. You could have said bar pri eitz zayis, the tree of the olive. So the Gemara now looks for a second reason. The Gemara says it's going to be because wine is filling and olive oil is not filling. The Gemara is going to have three levels of filling as far as this discussion goes. One is that something is called mezainis. The other one is that it's called filling. It makes you feel filled up a bit, it makes you feel satisfied, and the third is that it really fills you up like a meal. So the Gemara says, as far as mezainis, that can't be, because a statement from Rav Huna, the only things that qualify as mezainis are things that are made from the 5 grains. Neither wine nor olives are filling to that extent, so this couldn't be the reason why they get a special bracha. The Gemara says, okay, maybe the reason is because it makes you feel satisfied, makes you feel satiated, makes you feel good. The Gemara says that can be because we have a brisa that says that the only things that are not filling are water and salt. Everything else is filling to that extent. So olive is also filling, and therefore olive oil should also get a special bracha if that's the standard. Gemara says no. The idea is that we're looking for something that fills you, makes you feel satiated as if you just had a meal. Wine does that to you. Oil does not do that to you. The Gemara says, is that true? Is that true that wine will do that to you? But we have a statement that Rava used to drink a lot of wine on Erev Pesach in order that he should be hungry, so that he should eat a lot of matzah. The Gemara says, yeah, if you drink a lot of wine, it makes you hungry. If you drink a little bit of wine, it makes you feel full. The Gemara has another challenge to this. Is it true that wine makes you feel full? The Gemara says, it says that yayin yisamach levav enosh. Wine makes you feel happy. Lechem, bread, makes you feel full. That implies that wine doesn't make you feel full, only bread does. The Gemara says, no, wine does both. Makes you feel full, and it makes you feel happy. Bread only makes you feel full. That's what the pasuk meant to say. So the Gemara says, if it's true that wine makes you feel full and happy, then it should get 3 brachos. Just like we do after bread, we have a long bracha achrona. The Gemara says, yeah, but nobody makes an entire meal out of wine. You make a meal out of bread, that's why you get brachos hamazon afterwards. Wine, you do not. So the Gemara says, well, what if somebody sits down and he makes a meal out of wine? The Gemara says, listen, when Eliyahu Navi will come and he'll tell us that counts as a meal, then we'll discuss the shayla. Until then, nobody does that, and if somebody will do that, batla daitoy etzel das kol adam, his idea is insignificant against everybody else's. The Gemara now wants to know, how is it that you say a bracha at all on olive oil? We said that you say a ha'etz on it, and we had it said that it's its own special bracha, but how could you? Eating olive oil is not food. It hurts you. It doesn't help you. We even said that if somebody uses truma, so if he gets benefit out of it, he has to pay chomesh, a fifth, as a penalty, not just repay what he stole. But if he drinks truma oil, then he doesn't have to pay the fifth because he didn't get anything out of it. But if he rubs on his skin, he does. So you see clearly that drinking oil, you don't get anything out of it. Why should you say a bracha on it? So Gemara says, first answer we try is maybe he ate the oil together with bread. The Gemara says, well, if that's true, then the oil is called tuffle to the bread. It's subservient to the bread. You don't make a bracha on the oil at all, just on the bread. The Gemara says, okay, you put the oil in a nigrin, a type of sauce made out of beet juice and oil mixed together. So the Gemara says, then it's tuffle to the sauce. Then you shouldn't say a bracha on it either. The Gemara says, no, the case is that his throat was hurting him, and he put in a lot of oil so that it should be healthful to him, and you may have thought that you shouldn't say a bracha on it at all because he's eating it for his health, not for his benefit, but he enjoyed it, he's going to enjoy it, therefore he says a ha'etz on it, and it's not tuffle to the rest of the sauce because he put in a lot of oil because of the health benefits that it has.